4th century, the Black Death, 1347 to 1351. Imagine walking through a medieval town where the bells never stop tolling, where neighbors vanish overnight, and where every cough could be a death sentence. In the mid-14th century, Europe was struck by the Black Death, the most devastating pandemic in recorded history. Chroniclers like Jean Froissart and Giovanni Villani wrote with horror, convinced humanity was on the edge of extinction. The plague did not march in with armies, but crept in with stowaways, fleas carried by rats. Traveling silently aboard merchant ships from Asia, it slipped into Sicily in 1347. From there, it spread rapidly along trade routes, striking Genoa, Florence, and Paris. The disease moved faster than news, and entire cities fell before their rulers understood what was happening. The results were catastrophic. Within a few years, 1/3 of Europe's population, nearly 25 million people, had died. Priests abandoned their flocks. Doctors in grotesque beak-like masks offered useless remedies, and families deserted loved ones out of terror. Entire villages disappeared from the map. The survivors, however, found new leverage. With labor in short supply, peasants demanded higher wages. When lords resisted, revolts broke out, shaking the very foundations of feudalism. There was no cure. People prayed, bled themselves, or joined flagellant parades, but none of it worked. Over time, however, European societies adapted. Italian cities experimented with quarantine. Trade reorganized. Political power shifted. The Black Death did more than kill millions. It dismantled medieval society and forced Europe to reinvent itself. From the ruins of plague grew the roots of the modern world. 15th century, the Fall of Constantinople, 1453 year. Picture Constantinople, a city of gleaming domes, towering walls, and 1,000 years of defiance against invaders. It had outlasted Rome itself, earning the title Second Rome. Yet in 1453 year, in just 53 days, it fell. By then, the Byzantine Empire was a shadow of its former glory. Surrounded by the powerful Ottomans, it lacked both soldiers and money. The young Sultan Mehmed II, only 21, marched on the city with 80,000 men, a fleet on the Bosporus, and the terrifying new weapon of the age: massive cannons designed by the Hungarian engineer Orban. Against such firepower, even the mighty Theodosian walls, unbreached for 1,000 years, began to crumble. On May 29th, the final assault came. Emperor Constantine XI led his men in a desperate last stand and perished fighting in the streets. The Ottomans surged through the city, killing thousands and looting churches. Hagia Sophia, the jewel of Christendom, was converted into a mosque. The fall sent shockwaves across Europe. For the Byzantine Empire, the heir to Rome was gone. Worse still, the Ottomans now controlled the trade routes to Asia, driving up the cost of spices and silk. Yet this catastrophe opened unexpected doors. Denied land routes to the east, Europeans turned to the seas. Within decades, Columbus reached the Americas, and Vasco da Gama sailed around Africa. The Age of Discovery was born. For Mehmed the Conqueror, Constantinople was the foundation of empire. For Constantine XI, it was a heroic last breath. Their clash closed the medieval world and propelled Europe into a new age. 16th century, the Ottoman crisis. In the 1500s, the Ottoman Empire was the superpower everyone feared. Its armies thundered across Europe, its navy ruled the Mediterranean, and its capital, Istanbul, gleamed with mosques built by the great architect Sinan. But by the century's end, cracks began to show. Endless wars against Persia, Hungary, and Spain drained the treasury. Meanwhile, silver from the New World flooded global markets, fueling inflation that devalued Ottoman currency. Corruption spread through the bureaucracy. The Janissaries, once an elite corps of warriors, became entitled, demanding privileges and bribes. Worst of all, after the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent, the throne passed to weaker heirs like Selim II, nicknamed the Sot for his love of wine, and Murad III, who spent more time in the harem than in council chambers. Rebellions flared in Anatolia. Provinces grew restless. Governors treated their posts as personal kingdoms to exploit. On the battlefield, Ottoman armies began to falter against Europeans who had mastered gunpowder warfare. A state that had terrified Christendom only decades earlier now appeared vulnerable. The empire did not collapse then. Clever reforms and occasional strong sultans slowed the decline. But the aura of invincibility was gone. From this point on, the Ottomans would spend centuries struggling to defend what they once easily conquered. The empire of Suleiman had marched like a juggernaut. Under his heirs, it stumbled like a weary giant, still alive, but no longer unstoppable. 17th century, the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. If you think Europe today is divided, look back at the 1600s. The 30 Years' War was a catastrophe that turned Central Europe into a wasteland. What began as a local religious quarrel became a continental apocalypse. The spark came in Prague in 1618, when angry Protestant nobles hurled two Catholic officials out of a castle window. Behind this dramatic act lay deeper tensions, religious rivalries, imperial ambitions, and the greed of neighboring states. Spain, France, Sweden, and Denmark joined in, eager to grab territory while cloaking their ambitions in the language of faith. For 3 decades, armies ravaged Central Europe. Villages vanished, crops rotted, and famine stalked survivors. The population of Germany dropped by up to 40%. Generals became infamous. Albrecht von Wallenstein fought for profit, while Gustavus Adolphus, the Swedish Lion of the North, brought innovation and discipline, until he died in battle at Lutzen in 1632. Soldiers often fought less for faith than for food and plunder, turning the countryside into a battlefield of starvation. Eventually, exhaustion won. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648 ended the carnage. It redrew Europe's borders and established the principle of state sovereignty, a radical idea that countries could govern without outside interference. The war made legends of generals and kings, but its true legacy was forged in diplomacy. Out of unimaginable destruction rose the foundations of the modern international system. 18th century, the financial crisis of France, 1780s. Versailles glittered with fountains, chandeliers, and silk, while peasants in the countryside gnawed on black bread. The gap between rich and poor defined late 18th century France, and it would soon explode. France was bankrupt. Centuries of war and extravagant royal spending drained the treasury. Financing the American Revolution was the final straw, like buying a yacht while drowning in debt. The tax system was broken. Nobles and clergy paid almost nothing, while peasants bore the burden. Poor harvests pushed bread prices sky high. Finance Minister Jacques Necker warned King Louis XVI of looming disaster, but his warnings were ignored. By the late 1780s, creditors lost confidence. The crown teetered on bankruptcy, and hunger stalked the countryside. Louis summoned the Estates General to solve the problem. Instead, the Third Estate, representing commoners, seized power. Soon, the Bastille was stormed, heads rolled, and the monarchy crumbled. Marie Antoinette, remembered for her indifference, became a symbol of the old regime's cruelty. The financial meltdown became revolution. Feudal privileges were abolished, taxation restructured, and France experimented with constitutions and republics before Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power. Louis XVI dismissed warnings, but the people did not. In the end, it was not ministers or monarchs who decided France's fate, but the guillotine. 19th century, the Long Depression, 1873 to 1896. The 19th century was supposed to be the age of progress, steam engines, railroads, steel, and optimism. Yet in 1873, the global economy plunged into the longest downturn of the century. The crash began in Vienna when a speculative bubble in railroads and real estate burst. Across the Atlantic, America's railroad boom collapsed in the panic of 1873. Banks failed, investors panicked, and credit evaporated. Overproduction and reckless speculation created a storm no one could contain. Unemployment soared. Workers were cast into poverty. Strikes and riots erupted in cities like Chicago, Berlin, and Vienna. Farmers faced falling crop prices, while tycoons like Jay Gould and Cornelius Vanderbilt tightened their grip on industry and amassed fortunes. Ordinary families, however, suffered through decades of instability. Recovery was painfully slow. New industries, chemicals, electricity, steel, gradually created growth. Governments turned to tariffs and banking reforms. By the 1890s, economies stabilized, but society was transformed. Monopolies dominated markets, and inequality deepened. The Long Depression revealed a harsh truth. Railroads could deliver prosperity or disaster. And in every collapse, magnates profited while workers paid the price. 20th century, the Great Depression, 1929 to 1939. The 1920s roared with jazz, neon, and speculation. Wall Street was a temple of belief. Stocks could only rise. Then October 1929 shattered the illusion. Rampant speculation inflated stock prices beyond reason. Banks handed out risky loans. Farmers overproduced until crops lost value. Inequality left millions with little savings. When the bubble burst on Black Tuesday, panic cascaded through the financial system. By 1933, 1 in 4 Americans was unemployed. Families lost homes. Bread lines stretched for blocks. In Germany, despair fueled extremism, and Adolf Hitler rose to power. Around the world, economies shrank and trade collapsed. In the U.S., Franklin D. Roosevelt launched the New Deal, public works, social security, and banking reforms. While his leadership offered hope, true recovery only arrived with the mobilization of World War II. Roosevelt is remembered for courage, Hoover for failure. But for millions of ordinary people, the Great Depression was remembered in hunger, homelessness, and a bowl of soup. 21st century, crises of a global age. The 21st century was supposed to be the era of triumph, globalization, technology, and endless prosperity. For a moment, it seemed true. The early 2000s saw booming markets, rising home prices, and faith in a world without limits. But the illusion did not last. The global financial crisis of 2008 revealed how fragile the system was. Reckless lending, exotic financial products, and unchecked speculation nearly collapsed the global economy when Lehman Brothers fell. But the cracks went deeper. The 20th century had ended with the Cold War's shadow still looming. Nuclear arsenals remained, and new rivalries emerged between the United States, Russia, and a rising China. The fear of nuclear confrontation, once thought a relic of the 1960s, returned in new forms: proxy wars, missile tests, and threats of escalation. The 2008 crash cost millions their homes and jobs. Governments saved banks but failed to save trust. Inequality soared, fueling populism and political polarization. Meanwhile, climate change began unleashing disasters: fires, floods, and droughts across the globe. At the same time, technology raced ahead. Artificial intelligence and automation disrupted industries, while social media fractured societies with misinformation and division. Add to this the lingering threat of pandemics, renewed nuclear tensions, and wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, and the world began to feel like a powder keg once again. Unlike past centuries, the 21st century has not yet written its resolution. Central banks stabilized markets after 2008, but new crises, ecological, technological, geopolitical, continue to stack. Humanity faces choices: cooperation or fragmentation, innovation or collapse, peace or nuclear disaster. The Cold War promised mutually assured destruction. Today's world offers a similar gamble: not just nuclear weapons, but financial instability, climate breakdown, and runaway technology. The question remains: will the 21st century be remembered as the age humanity finally learned to survive its own crises, or the one in which it didn't?